like standard 20th century physicalist American paradigm.
Uh-huh.
So it's neat. Are you recording?
Yeah.
Okay. It's neat that the capacity of the medium and also the human relationality that emerges in the context of that capacity, which is to say, two people said, there's a new guy doing stuff on the YouTube that you should check out.
Mm.
So on the one hand, because of the YouTube, he could create the meaning crisis and disseminate it, you kind of throw the bottle into the ocean, and also, in principle, some billions of people could choose to see it.
Yeah.
And we're now long enough into this that there's a culture of kind of like New Yorkers recommending restaurants
Mm-hmm.
of this is the thing. Like I watched it. It has the right flavor and taste to it. I'm only like 2 episodes in, but it's definitely going to be A, your kind of thing, and B, I think it's going to be the thing. With David Fuller being one of those 2 people.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Um,
Mm.
so there's that, right? So there's the fact of the kismet that we can have these conversations with John and then ultimately with each other.
Mm-hmm.
That I think is quite interesting, and the the immediate, almost like the efficient cause of why you and I are talking is
Mm-hmm.
that after he and I spoke a few times, I can't remember what happened, but something in my body settled in that said that such that I found myself saying working group on the new religion that isn't a religion, meaning it feels like there's a good
Mm-hmm.
possibility of doing something where there's a little nudge, a little push of extra intentionality to coalesce some group, not many, probably 5 to 7, who get together in some periodicity in physical space, not via uh, this medium, to push the inquiry of a new religion that isn't a religion, and probably a new credo that is, what's the term, that is always subordinate to religion,
Mm.
further,
Mm.
meaningfully further.
Mm.
And John recommended you
Mm.
as somebody that would be potentially interested in and bringing particular capacities to this conversation.
Mm.
So
Mm.
that's the
Mm.
sort of the standard order interpretation of how it is that we come to be talking together today.
Yeah, totally. Well, first I just feel moved by I feel moved and shocked and like um appreciative, and just there's a way in which uh as I was talking about earlier, there is a way in which um I kind of I can experience these deep love affairs with people in this space of philosophia, right? This quality of dialogue, of like disclosure and self-disclosure that is really going through something together. There's a particular kind of love bonding that I experience that is
Mm-hmm.
is something that I just I've been experiencing it with John and multiple people in my life, right? My history, I can almost look at my personal history as different points in which I had friends or a friend that went deep into this kind of train of thought that created a whole atmosphere that ended up altering my presuppositions that had me perceived differently, and just the deep personal bonds that I've created with people. So I just
Hmm.
had a wave of that, right? When you told me that.
Hmm. Hmm. Wow. So I found myself just then, on the one hand, reflecting back on my own experiences of that, and even into relationships that were younger, like the teacher, the teacher who brought that same context and that feeling of sharpness of life and richness of possibility and meaningfulness of relationship, even if it was just one semester.
Yeah.
Um, and then I guess coming from this direction, there was a feeling of, and then down, of what's the term, like omen or moment, that when you finished what you were saying and the whole thing sort of landed, almost like a finger pointing or something saying, now pay attention, there's something about what just happened or what's going on is particularly meaningful.
Mm.
How funny. So John mentioned Heidegger,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm really interested, really quite interested in that.
Mm.
I don't know why my mind jumped to it so quickly, but it's clearly chomping at the bit, so perhaps it is a good idea to run with it.
Mm.
Though I have no particular attachment to following that path at any pace, perhaps it's better to slow down.
Yeah, totally. I couple things, like, yeah, Heidegger's a whole world. Like, it's a whole world that's it's a world that's, there's something that Heidegger, I think, was haunted him, that revealed a level of thinking, or you could say the movement of intelligibility, right? That I started to read for reasons I don't quite understand, at the same time that circling was emerging. Because my background is, I don't have, like, I'm not academic. Yeah. What? Just really quick, that, could you say that another way?
Yeah. Or at all.
I don't know if I could paraphrase that completely.
That was the dropping in of the realization of what it would mean to be dealing with Heidegger in the context of a group of people in a process that actually could enable that group to have a collective capacity.
Yeah. Yeah. And what's interesting, and this is what's telling about, I think, revealing about the world, like what Heidegger was doing, is I didn't realize the connection between the two until like 2 or 3 years later, because I didn't quite understand why I was reading Heidegger, because I didn't really understand him. I mean, I'm dyslexic, and I couldn't learn how to read until I was like 11, and took a heroic teacher to kind of do that for me. And so my reading comprehension is not like the best. So I didn't quite understand why I was reading the hardest philosopher in like known to man. But there was something about what he was saying about being, that that it was like, to attempt to understand him, what I realized was to try to understand him. And this is similar to my experience of actually being mentored or being with a teacher, that there's this quality of, as Rilke would, or as Vervaeke would say, of participatory, right? Participation, in which, like with the mentor, when my grandfather, who was a tailor, who was mentored for 2 years, as he lived in a park in Hanover, Germany, when he would talk about stories about dwelling with his mentor, there was this dwelling quality where much of the learning wasn't so much about what the tailor said about tailoring. It was sitting next to him for hours at a time, right? Eating lunch with him, all of the sensibility and the history of tailorhood and his way of being, that you kind of dwell in. And then you kind of come out, in some sense, mentored fully through that, right? You kind of carry that way of being, right? So I would imagine it's similar to that experience of when you go to another country and you come back home and people tell you you have an accent. It's very much like that. Like for me, there's like what Heidegger says and understanding what he says. And when people summarize Heidegger, there's positions and stuff he takes, but that's not really Heidegger. Heidegger is taking you on this walk of thinking, right? And the point is mostly it's the experience of understanding that is the thing I was most left with. Because though I would, like, you read Heidegger, so you're like trying to, like, in order to kind of understand what he's saying, you have to step so outside of your frame of reference, right? To then look back and then kind of get it, and then start all over again, right? And,
yeah.
And I would just do that for hours and hours and hours and hours, and then I go in circle, and then do that and I'd circle and I'd do that and I'd circle and I'd do that and I'd circle. I was back and forth. And then one day somebody said something that had this vernacular that was just the accent of circling. And it was, I'm like, oh shit. And all of a sudden it hit me. I'm like, very funny, grandfather Heidegger. oh, I see this. What I realized is he taught me actually how to see. He taught me that there's, like, you could say, the phenomenological sense is this awareness of that concealment is, and that which is most concealed is that which is most near, and that kind of looking of getting that sense of a horizon or a telos, and also the background and the foreground, and just having this sense of just following that back, that kind of closer and closer and closer in, which is, I would say, in circling, started to cultivate this deep sense of wonder, right? About what I think the way that Vervaeke talks about is this transframing, this primordial ground, which when you realize it, there's this kind of primordial sense of wonderment that comes up, that is also the very experience of when you participate with each other in that sense of wonderment. It seems to produce the kind of experiences that people call wonder and love and affinity and unreasonable devotion and all of that stuff, you know?
Yeah. Wow. Well, I'm not sure if one thing that was running through my way of making sense of what I was perceiving, was the sense or the feeling of like a space-time. Okay, I can say it this way. I had an insight a long time ago where I realized that if you take a look at a lightning bolt, and from the perspective of a person looking at a lightning bolt, it looks jaggedy. But from the perspective of the lightning bolt, it's a perfectly straight line. Because we're looking at it from what you might call a neutral third-person perspective through space.
Mm-hmm.
It's perceiving the galvanic potential.
Mm-hmm.
So it's proceeding along the gradient of galvanic potential, and is simply following the straightest path through the gradient of galvanic potential.
Yeah.
So from its perspective, it's traversing a straight line.
Yeah.
And then I was imagining the notion of a circle, circling, but a circle. And the circle has from again, objective third-person space-time perspective, I can say that you're in a circle when there are a group of people oriented, I would imagine, in a all facing inward geometrically.
Yeah.
All the same place at the same time.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But then I was having this flash of, for example, when I was reading Manuel de Landa, actually that book right there, and how it connected with a conversation that I had been having in my head, of course, with Gilles Deleuze. And there was a flash of insight as the two connected. And I had this feeling of it being as if we were in a circle, but mediated through a phenomenology that has a different frame of reference.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Can you say more about the frame of reference?
Yeah. Oh man. Well, if we just zoom in on the conversation we're having right now.
Yeah.
And I can feel myself getting lost. So if I get lost, please bring me back.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What we can notice is that there's a very fun objective illusion that we're having a conversation with each other. In some sense, this is as if we were face to face.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
separated by a couple of feet.
Yeah.
And yet, of course, if I notice what's happening in reality, it couldn't be further from the truth. In fact, it's quite likely that the sound waves that are being projected into my microphone electrically and converted into digital signals inside my laptop, packeted up in TCP/IP packets, and then spewed across the internet through the protocol that may in fact be jumping through satellites into space and back down,
Mm.
which then are emerged, converted into analog signals in your laptop.
Mm.
The medium that enables that creates so think about that like the lightning bolt.
Mm-hmm.
There's a objective perspective on our point of view that collapses that entire complexity of the underlying reality of what packet space would perceive as a hell of a job into something that is isomorphic to a face-to-face conversation.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So if I can run that same projection here and simulate a face-to-face conversation using a medium, a variety of different media constructs, I could do the inverse. And I could say, oh, well, it looks like the medium of capitalism producing books and shipping them to me via Amazon and projecting text into my eyeball that was glued to paper, I mimetically copying the text that was actually scripted by, in this case, Deleuze and Delanda over a different time frame. Same exact thing in reverse. And so, in point of fact, I am actually in a circle with them, but that circle is propagating through reality in a different kind of way. And if we can actually grok the consequences of the media on the way that the consciousness is actually able to form itself as a coherent singularity, then we're doing something interesting. Hey, I don't think I got lost. I pulled it off. Oh, neat.
You really did pull it off. Yeah, totally. A couple of things. You say how many kids do you have?
I have 3. I have a 17-year-old, I have
Okay.
a 15-year-old, and I have an 11-month-old.
Okay, so that's what I got from one of your interviews. You talked about just having a newborn. How's that? How is that?
It is incredible, actually. It's funny because going in, I've done it before, twice, and paid a lot of attention. I wasn't sort of like just passing through.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I knew about myself was that to be perfectly honest, don't find the first 6 months of children to be particularly interesting. Not my thing.
Mm-hmm.
But after 6 months, it starts to build. And now at 11 months, it's out of this world, how nice it is. And how like delightful, and almost always. And the ability to now be so fully present, both in terms of time.
Mm-hmm.
I can choose how I want to spend my time. And so I allocate my time to best advantage for our my relationship with my daughter and my wife. But then also the self, the self that I am, and the capacity of this self to be present to herself, is well. In point of fact, there are no words, but it's nice.
That sense of, I know what you mean, that sense of when they're first born, the first 6 months, they're kind of like an amoeba.
Yeah.
And they're all mom, right? They're all kind of for all
sure.
There are a bunch of tubes that build up pressure, and then mom happens, and then they release, and then we help with the cleanup, or something like that.
Yep. Yeah.
But,
and every once in a while, we sort of like walk around in circles for a while so mom can get some sleep.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. How long have you been married?
5 years.
Uh-huh.
And at a previous marriage, it was for 18 years.
Okay, got it. And how's it being married just with, now that you have a child between the two of you? How have you come?
Well, the basis of our relationship was a choice, a conscious choice, to enter into a very conscious coevolutionary relationship. And so then to have a child was also a very conscious choice taken over a solid 2 years of really building the capacity to even understand what it would mean to make that as a choice.
Oh, wow.
and being quite aware of the implications for the relationship.
Uh-huh.
And again, it has been astounding.
Right.
Of course, very painful, very challenging. Broken, bent things that had seemed solid or easy.
Mm-hmm.
But just in continuing to increase the surface area of the possibility of relationship.
Hmm. Hmm. I'm just like, part of the way that part of my hmms, I'm noticing, like in my resonance with this, is I feel I'm in the midst of being utterly struck by how being married has completely affected me in ways I was not anticipating.
How long have you been married?
I've been married about 9 months.
Oh, wow. So,
Yeah.
um,
I've been with the woman I've been married for about going on like about 8.5 years, with like
okay.
a year and a half gap in between there. And it's so I'm I'm I think that I'm really, really struck by, now I've been married before. I was married, in my early 20s and for about 14 years. And it just wasn't the same thing.
Mm-mm.
This is really kind of this sense, there's really this sense of where I didn't even realize to what degree I had not experienced what I'm experiencing now that I'm wedded. But it feels like there's a certain kind of surrender where I really did wed. Like I really did wed, like my being. And it feels very much as if the most the right thing got put in the center of the mandala. And then I had this ontological chiropractic shift, like something,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Very nice. I know that. I know that feeling. Yeah. The right. Yes. That's very well put. I like that.
And so I think one of the things that's really striking me about it is, you can just hear by like, the child of like being the child of a secular humanist, like I'm like, whoa, there's really something to this marriage thing. But I actually really mean that in this deep sense of some kind of potential kind of got realized in this sense of dropping in that deeply with somebody in such a local way. And I felt the tickle of that in a podcast actually that I was listening of you this morning. I forget who it was, but it was an entrepreneur podcast. I think John.
Venture stories.
Yeah, and there was this sense in which I really liked it. I got this feeling of as you were talking about it, where I felt this sense of like where almost like my proprioception of time went on all directions, this kind of greater picture, and then I got landed in this sense of like, okay, like stick to what's real, right? Like tend to your relationship,
Oh,
like that. But it had that sense of like where I felt stretched, and then whoomp, and all of it was coherent of this sense of just like being with what's most real and bringing our attention on that, and like, like my wife, my relationship with my wife, right? The way that I treat my neighbor, the way that I eat, like this sense of it just felt like those things were so much more salient just through listening to you, but also had so much more of the whole inside of it. It was very wholesome.
wow. Well, thank you. That's
Yeah, it was an experience.
wonderful.
That was the experience I had of listening. Yeah.
So I am almost never listen to a podcast that I've been on.
Uh-huh.
And my first person experience is that I have very little. I'm very into. I'm not thinking about what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And so I actually have very little memory of the podcast that I'm in.
Mhm.
So this is actually the first time I've gotten feedback on that particular podcast. So thank you.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
That's very nice to hear.
Yeah, listening to it sometime. I would recommend it.
Wow,
Yeah.
I will try.
Yeah.
That could be interesting and fun. That's great. Oh wow, that's really wonderful. It kind of makes sense the way you're describing it.
Yeah.
Um,
How so?
Let me see if I can. Well, okay. So we can. I think we can even be just in the middle of it.
Mhm.
So what I was just doing just then,
I was just going to ask you, what were you just doing right there?
I was trying to. It's kind of like pulling taffy.
Hmm.
I was trying to.
Hmm.
Let's see if I can get in there. Wholeness. You said wholeness and wholesome.
Mhm. Yeah.
Stay connected. I was trying to stay connected and to bring, to pull or stretch that connectedness into the context of the moment while maintaining the continuity of the connectedness.
Hmm. Hmm.
Hmm. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do. That's my endeavor. And it's funny, like I'm making a lot of weird noises and rolling my eyes and doing things, but it's like
Yeah.
this is a lot closer to juggling than it is to talking.
Yeah.
Um, it's weird. I'm not quite sure what's happening. I don't have a good, and I prefer not to try to describe it too much. It feels like the kind of thing that
Yeah.
turns into a credo that
You,
isn't subordinate to a religion.
what do you understand about it that has it makes sense to not try to describe it? Like, what's the thing that we're
Yeah,
so,
yeah. Um, that's very powerful. The question there is very powerful. There's a lot of importance or potency that is implicated in the inquiry. It has to do with the uh, as you can imagine, the effort to be able to speak without about this question is very challenging.
yeah.
It has to do with the necessity of preventing the inauthentic articulation of meaning in subordination to a wow, God, it's just really hard.
Hmm.
I'm trying very hard not to simply be a Taoist.
Hmm.
The easy thing would to be to say that that which is endeavoring to express itself is precisely that which cannot be said. But
Yeah.
that doesn't answer the question in the least. It just says the question, it just says it again in a different way.
If we just look at just for a second, so this is this is like kind of what I'm experiencing and listening to you is that whatever it is that we probably won't say, but we'll say in the not saying it, right? The sense of orientation that I would imagine has it make sense to respond to it with both effort and care already reveals something to me about it.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yep.
like I feel that just as I'm listening in the kind of in the tar and there's a sense in which there's something about the respectfulness of it and the sense of the effort that's worth it and the particular hardness, but the engagement already reveals it in some way to me.
Yes. Yes. This is right. This is very nice. This is words that come up that are very easy that simplify but also have exactly the characteristic of doing the thing that we're trying to avoid
Yeah.
are things like sacred and profane.
Yeah.
Um,
Mm.
and Paul Vanderklay. Yes, I was watching a portion. I quite liked it, actually, and I hope I can get the time to finish watching it, of a conversation between John and Paul Vanderklay. I don't know anything about Paul's background at all, unfortunately. I went in quite cold. But they were talking about the Hebraic elision of the name of God, and that is not something that is spoken. And I think it has to do with carefulness, as you said, care.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a few more things that start to pour out. There's these are connected. They're not the center of it, but they come with it. They're like fellow travelers. What's the Whitman poem? These are like gibbering, slanty-eyed shamblers that come slouching along with the profane. We have our marketers, for example, and our idolaters, that once it is named, it is very easy to be able to articulate the sounds that are framed in the words so that they sound like the thing that is being said but are not it. And in fact, precisely get between the soul and the thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Concealment. Yeah. The sense of disclose. Well, if you think about reveal, I caught wind of this just the other day. I was thinking about this. This is the word reveal. Well, one, something that's veiled, right? First, it discloses like something's precious enough to veil, right? You only veil that which is precious enough. But to reveal means both ways, right? To reveal it and to reveal.
Yes.
This revealing quality of disclosure of that. And that's one of the things, if Heidegger had one thought, my understanding of the one thought his whole life he dedicated to think was, what is the question of the being of beings? And another way of putting that is, how do you talk about context without making it a content? How do you disclose being that the way in which it discloses itself is it reveals itself in its simultaneous withdrawal.
Yeah.
Right. So there's a way in which I feel right at the center of that with you in some regard. And that something about that Alethian sense of the awareness that concealment is. Because I was thinking about like moments of insight, right? And this is, you would say, this is exactly what Heidegger would say is that concealment itself is concealed in our modern times, right? And the age of technology, in its enframing sense of that the being of beings is a standing reserve awaiting our optimization in that which it, but here's the thing is you said you're from Texas, right?
I am. I was born there.
Which part of Texas?
I was born in Lubbock and I was raised in the hill country.
Okay. I'm not that familiar with my son.
West of Austin, northwest of San Antonio.
Okay. Got you. Plano, Texas.
Okay. I know it.
Like there's this way there, that track homey shopping center, like lots of Texas with these huge track homes that go on for miles, like with one, it's hell. Like I go
it's
there.
Hell. Yes, it's hell.
I'm like, it is so, I cannot be there. My son lives there and I can't stay there for more than 3 days. And I just feel like I just need to commit suicide or something, right? There's something so fundamentally awful about it. But one of the things that makes it hell for me is that no one's walking around going, this is hell.
We're in a very odd spot right now because I was thinking almost exactly these same thoughts about 4 hours ago.
Huh.
Yeah. And one of the things that makes it hell is that no one's walking around. Just full stop.
Yeah.
If you walk around, you'll notice no one's walking around.
Right. And no one's going like, this is awful.
No.
So that's one of the things that you say that Heidegger would say that's the ontotheology of our times, that concealment itself has become concealed.
Yeah.
Like a truly dark time is not a time when people are,
Yes, yes.
it's dark. It's where it's dark that it's dark.
Mm-hmm.
So in some,
Yeah, and it's actually can be very like very simple,
yeah,
and very personal
yeah,
about we were talking earlier, I think before we started recording, about the way that there's an experience of this conversation happening through Zoom,
yeah,
where the framing of your face up close and also the way that the body is sort of locked in. We go into this fugue state where we're actually not being aware of the physical sensations of our body, the amount of energy that we're pouring into this experience, so that when we're done, we're kind of like unplugged and like, oh my God, that
right,
was like 3 days worth of experience that happened in an hour.
right,
And that's a lot of very similar, and many people experience that. The experience of I remember when my oldest daughter, and much to my chagrin, we were not thoughtful about this, but she watched a television show. She watched many, but particularly one called Teletubbies. And I remember the experience of when I turned off the TV, she would actually get physically enraged, and the disconnect between where you are, who you are, the experience that you're having, and then your body's experience, that ability to have your body and your mind be differentially experiencing what's happening, and to actually not be in right relationship with each other, is very common. Like almost everyone has that experience almost all the time. And it's a very nice, like simple way of articulating that, the thing that you were talking about. And then when you have that experience of the what do you call them, like suburban strip mall hell,
yeah,
it's the ontological design equivalent of that same phenomenon. And I think they're distinctly connected. The only way that we can endure living in suburban strip mall hell is
yeah,
that we spend almost all of our time looking at a flickering screen that's causing our mind to feel like it's getting meaningfulness,
yeah,
and pushing the chemicals into our body that generates the simulation of meaningfulness.
right,
And then we go to sleep.
yeah, yeah, totally. And I think that one of the things I just noticed, the pace is different
Yeah.
in the conversation. What do you think? It's like, I just noticed that the pace is different. I feel a little bit less, um, there's an orientation, or like, I feel like something is gathering a little bit more.
So when you pointed it out, I also noticed that, which is to say that I agree that it is the case.
Mm-hmm.
But I also noticed that prior to your pointing it out, I was in it, not noticing it.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like something about that is part of the why, or what is happening.
Oh, that in it versus and not noticing it, and then the pointing it out and realizing that I was in it without noticing it is part of the very thing that is gathering.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, got it. To bring in something that you said earlier, like one of the things that kind of just, I think, also touched me in the beginning, when you talked to me about, when you said something about something about, yeah, I think it's time to gather the people, right?
Mm-hmm.
The religion of no religion, or the non-religious religion, that particular thing, that readiness to kind of come to form with something. Part of what I think moved me was this sense of what I gather from you, and just my experience of you, and the sensibility of the way that you move, and the cadences of your voice, and where your attention goes, is that one of the things that has just been keeps communicating itself to my listening of you, is this real clear an awareness of a danger into cu- uh, I don't know if the word is clutching onto something um, in a such that it goes in a predictable route of
Mm-hmm.
uh, and so there's this it's interesting. I think part of the thing that hit me was I was going like, oh, that you're wanting to do that it's coming to it makes sense to you on some to even consider to bring some form to this, right? Or gather the people, right, around. It's like almost like given my sense of you, that sounded meaningful to me, but also like risky.
Mm. Um,
And I think I felt a little like I felt touched to be a part of that risk, right? If that's the case. But that was kind of the felt sense of the whole thing that I just tried to unpack right there.
Great. Yeah. So first, I'd just like to share my appreciation for what it is you bring into this conversation, have brought, and I hope that you continue to bring,
Mm.
and not just in this conversation, but over time. Um, the qualities and skillfulness of both being aware and of communicating things that seem to have a lot of, yeah, again, this wholeness or wholesomeness. It really, I feel a lot of care on your part to actually be mindful of where the balance is and making sure that the balance is being brought, and when things go in a certain direction, just sort of bringing things into that maybe aren't quite being heard, like
Mm.
maintaining the integrity of the circle, the
Mm.
sphericity of the sphere.
Mm.
So very much appreciate that.
Appreciation received.
To the point. And yes, I think this sense feels quite right. I feel a similar sense
Mhm.
of trepidation, to walk closely, to tread carefully on this possibility.
Mm.
Um, it feels to me like the way that a crystal might emerge in a saturated solution.
Mm. Mm. Mm.
Almost, maybe not quite, but close. Ooh. And I think the point would be to actually get it from close to all the way
Mm.
to the way that a stem cell or set of cluster of stem cells would choose to differentiate into their particular tissues.
Mm.
So this context, the being of being.
Mm. Mhm.
Um, but as you say, very easy to yank that out of its place.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's can I ask you what is it like to consider to find you I would imagine it's like finding yourself considering bringing people together in something like the religion of religion. Also like what, just if you could, if there's any more form about that you can share of like the thoughts and some of the ideas of what you see. But what is it like to watch yourself actually start to look at some specifics around it?
Mm-hmm. Um, so probably the first part that comes up is something like, when you're listening to something,
Hmm.
and you can't quite make out what it is.
Hmm. Hmm.
And then you start to be able to understand what it is that you're listening to. So a song that has been in my soul for a very long time,
Hmm.
that suddenly someone, say like John, says something, and it's more of remembering than it is, or a recognition. Aha, that's the sound of it. That's what it sounded like. That's the thing that was being said. That's the sound that had sort of been murmuring in the back of my mind for the past 40 years. Okay. And then a pacing of that. There's a feeling of a coalescence where there's a merging possibility that seems to have almost like a rushing or a zooming to it,
Hmm.
and a notion of it's like it's like running backwards somehow.
Hmm.
It's hard to. This is very poor language. I fear.
That's- the first one just totally
Yeah.
rocked me. I heard the song. I heard
Yeah.
the song of you hearing your song coming into articulation. There's something that's so that and that you spoke of listening
Hmm.
is real meaningful for me.
Yeah. This is the thing that was somebody not too long ago talked to me about a way of perceiving the moment, the present. Yeah. We typically find ourselves, and again, there's a lot of Heidegger here about perceiving the present as the consequence of the past,
Mm.
as say a rocket ship driven by the past into the future.
Mm.
But there's also a way of perceiving the present as a sailing ship being drawn into the future, pulled into the future with no connection to the past, leaving the past behind.
Mm.
Um, and that's what I mean by that experience of almost like going backwards.
Yeah.
Um, you can't. You're like proceeding, but you're walking backwards. You're not seeing ahead where you're going. Rather, it's almost like as you see it as you've passed it, and you're feeling it behind you. You're feeling the emerging thing behind you and around you and flowing through it. And then as it shows up, you can begin to see it, and you can begin to name it, and you can begin to go, oh, that's what, there it is, aha. But you're actually not without skill in this movement. There's a way to actually use that sensibility and the sensitivity of what it is that's going on in that directionality to be able to guide your choices, so that even though the capacity to see and to name, which was for such a long time front and center, is actually inverted and backwards, nonetheless, it actually is a more relevant way
Yeah.
of navigating. So that's what it feels like.
So the sense of future, both he's got the sense of the future to past to present, of it just really does remind me of Heidegger, of that sense of it. But so what do you say is like the past being having a gravity, right, of the historicity of that's like not history like a series of events that are available to everybody, right? But history in the sense of the way that you and I are sitting, that it makes sense to sit in the way that we are, that we're on a chair, that we're upright, that you went like this, that there's like that, all that has intelligibility is layered in gravities
Yeah.
of customs, of social practices, of cultures, of that we live, right? Yet that history is, in some sense, is the history of the constant becoming of the future, right? The calling us forward, right? And so the present is that point where it goes future, past, and then the present is the mutuality of those points where it comes into like music. Like with music, you only hear you pick up the note, but actually the note animates the tensions of the elongating rhythms of the past, and then the anticipation of the future is the experience of the music. It's not the animated note of the present. So that sense of richness, and when you said,
Ooh. Uh-huh. Can I say something?
oh, please. I was just gonna
So
you put that in.
I had an experience with a gentleman named Josh, who's a truly masterful guitar player, like capital M. And we were in an ayahuasca ceremony,
Yeah.
and he was playing music as part of it. And he wasn't playing songs; he was playing music.
Yeah.
Which is to say that every note that was struck was new in universe, in the relationship of the context that it was in. Had never been played before and would never be played again. And I listened very closely for a while, for like an hour, 2 hours. I don't know how long it was, as you can imagine. He did not strike a single false note. He played continuously for hours, and every note was perfectly placed between the note before and after, and had never been played before. He was not playing a song, but rather he was creating music.
Yeah.
That, I think, that's a very nice way of speaking to this.
Yeah, totally.
And that also really highlights that notion of concealment.
Yeah.
If I whistle the tune of Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, there's something very, very different, very different about that.
Yeah.
Not the same.
Yeah.
That's the past, right? That's the past reanimating itself through me, as opposed to the future revealing itself through me.
Well, in some way, it's like the past is already reached. It's always in, it seems to me that the past only shows up in its bringing gravity to the nurturing forth of a possibility, right?
I like that. It sounds really nice.
Yeah, this kind of weaving sense of it. And I think this is, but in my experience of that, most of the things that I call genuinely good in my life have started with the sense of I'm going along and then something shines forth, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm like, and I just, if I'm fortunate enough, I could just can't stop looking at it, right? And then start moving in that direction. But the things that have been really deep for me have been this process of like 20 years later, I'm still finding out what I was interested in, right? And then the trail that's left behind is like our like methodologies and religions and like a whole series of things of me finding out what I was interested in, right? Or what grabbed or seized me. And this is the mystery to me of like, I don't actually understand. How do I know to be struck by something before I understand it to be struck by it?
Yeah, I mean, that's such a it is a mystery. In fact, it may be the mystery. I mean, we may find ourselves dancing around the light of religion on that exact note.
Yeah.
I've had the same exact experience.
Yeah.
In fact, the way you were describing Heidegger made me laugh, because I had the feeling with Deleuze.
Yeah.
Where I'm sitting there and I have this feeling of just like almost being like held and like smacked up against it, for years, just boom, boom. And, just cracking open the Anti-Oedipus and just reading through the whole thing and going, I don't know what the fuck just happened. Like I don't even recall a single word that was said. What's going on?
Yeah.
And then I would read and read and read, and just like, as you say, like it's like this absorption, this digestion, this metabolism. And what is it? What is it that brings you into that and locks you into it? Like, it doesn't make sense. Why in God's name would you spend that much time doing something that you cannot justify? It does not make sense. The whole point is it doesn't make sense. And yet it is the very center of that, which is, well, shoot, I stopped myself from speaking because something else popped in. One of the things I've noticed, and we could even say to have become wise, wisdom. So as I've gotten older, wisdom for me is precisely the ability to have had enough of those experiences to say, it's another one of those again. Okay. Mm-hmm. I've seen you before. I'm quite certain that I haven't the slightest idea what's going on here. And that's okay, because everything that's really mattered has been like this. So I'm going to stick with this.
Yes. So there's a way, is it fair to say that, well, I think what you just said is there's a way that I could come to know that not knowing to where my character becomes shaped into someone that can not know more.
That. Yep. Yeah. That right there. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah. I just felt like two monkeys for a moment. Yeah, right
there. Which you can imagine, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this is the same thing. We're actually doing the same thing. Like when the first monkey like napped the flint.
Yeah.
And the other was like, yes, whatever you just did there, dude. That was it. I don't know what. Whoa, can we do that again?
Oh, well, it seems like whatever it is.
Oh, hold on. Sorry, I just need to.
Totally.
Yeah, that was sacred. That was the thing. So I would like to just extend honor and gratitude in that direction.
I just, as you were going like this, I was like, I felt this like well of love.
Mm-hmm.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
I very much look forward to seeing what comes of this.
Me too.
And I would say that, though I do not know that you have any such intent, I would, if anyone wants to watch this video, I would have no inhibitions against that.
Okay, good. I'm glad to hear that.
Man, this was fun. I'm glad to meet you, dude.
Nice to meet you too.
Now, how old are you?
Let's see, I'm 47, I think.
I'm 48.
48? Sweet.
Yeah. And where were you born?
Maybe 48. I was 1972.
71. Yeah, so you're 47. It depends on the month.
Got you. Happy birthday, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, this is a weird thing, isn't it? This whole being alive.
It's I hope I could be deserving of or could hold the perplexity that I think it is. I hope I can be sufficiently perplexed, but awkwardly.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, was it gobsmacked? That's a good one. I like gobsmacked.
Right. Absolutely.
Oh,
absolutely. Yeah. I unfortunately have another meeting. Yep. I have to hop into. Very nice to meet you. And I look forward to more, whatever the thing is.
Yep.
I'm there.
Something good is happening.
Yeah.
Ciao. Have a good menu.
Bye.